The kitchen clock read 2:47 a.m. when I heard Veronica's key in the lock. I sat in the darkness, nursing my third cup of coffee, watching the shadows dance across our pristine marble countertops. Another late-night design consultation had kept my devoted wife away until the early morning hours. How thoughtful of her clients to need interior design advice at strip clubs and hotel bars. "Ben?" Veronica's voice carried that practiced surprise she'd perfected over the past 6 months. "What are you doing up?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I flicked on the under-cabinet lighting, casting her in an unflattering glow. Her carefully applied makeup had migrated south, and her designer dress looked like it had been through a wrestling match. "Couldn't sleep. You know how I get when you're working so hard." She clutched her purse against her chest like a shield. "The Morrison project is really demanding. Mrs. Morrison has very specific ideas about—" Her phone buzzed. The sound cut through her lie like a knife through butter. Veronica's eyes went wide, and she lunged for the device with the desperation of a drowning woman reaching for a life preserver. "Popular night for design emergencies," I observed, sipping my coffee. "It's just Maya. Girl talk, you know how it is." She powered down the phone without reading the message. "I'm exhausted. Going to bed." I watched her retreat upstairs, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown timer. Maya Chen, her supposed best friend, had been out of town for 2 weeks. I knew because Maya's Instagram showed her sunbathing in Cabo every day. The next morning brought revelation wrapped in mundane routine. Veronica had rushed off to her early client meeting, leaving her iPad charging on the kitchen counter. I was updating our shared grocery app when a notification popped up that changed everything. V Uncaged has a new follower request. V Uncaged. My wife of 12 years had branded herself like an energy drink. The secret Instagram account opened like Pandora's box. Photo after photo of Veronica in poses that would make a Victoria's Secret model blush. The bio read, "Unattached and seeking fun. Life's too short for boring." Unattached. 12 years of marriage, and I'd been demoted to roommate status without notice. The direct messages told the real story. Dozens of men sliding into her DMs with offers that had nothing to do with interior design. Her responses were flirtatious, encouraging, and sometimes included meeting locations. The Ritz-Carlton bar, the Marina Club, places I'd never been invited to join her work events. I scrolled through months of evidence, my coffee growing cold as my pressure spiked. Screenshots of restaurant receipts she'd never mentioned, photos of her wearing jewelry I'd never seen, comments from men whose names I didn't recognize but whose intentions were crystal clear. The final straw was a photo from 3 nights ago. Veronica, in a red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, sitting in a candlelit restaurant booth with a man who definitely wasn't a client. His hand rested possessively on her thigh while she laughed at something he'd said. The caption read, "When the night is young and full of possibilities." I'd been home that night watching Netflix and eating leftover pizza, wondering why my wife was working such long hours. The rage that filled me wasn't the hot, explosive kind you see in movies. It was cold and calculating, like ice forming over a deep lake. Veronica thought she was playing games? Fine, but she'd been playing checkers while I was about to introduce her to chess. I created my own Instagram account, Ben Revamped. If my wife wanted to play the field, she was about to discover that 2 could play this game, and I'd always been better at strategy than she was. The first photo I posted was simple, a selfie in my BMW, wearing the expensive watch she'd bought me last Christmas. The caption read, "New chapter, new possibilities. Sometimes the best adventures start when you stop waiting for permission." Within an hour, I had 50 followers. By evening, it was over 200. Apparently, a suddenly single financial analyst with a 6-figure salary and no wedding ring was quite the commodity in our social circle. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya Chen. The real Maya, not Veronica's imaginary late-night confidant. Ben, saw your Instagram. Are you and Veronica okay? Call me. I smiled and set the phone aside. The game had officially begun. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new bachelor pad downtown, a sleek 2-bedroom apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. The lease was in my name only, funded by the separate savings account Veronica didn't know existed. When you're a financial analyst, hiding money is easier than most people think. This is some serious James Bond stuff, Owen Murphy said, dropping a thick manila folder on my glass coffee table. My old college roommate had traded his economics degree for a private investigator's license after a messy divorce taught him the value of professional paranoia. Your wife's been busy. I opened the folder while Owen helped himself to a beer from my fridge. The first photo showed Veronica entering the Marina Club with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark hair, expensive suit, and the kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never heard the word no in his life. Julian Mercer, Owen said, reading over my shoulder. 32, tech entrepreneur, drives a Tesla Model S, and owns a penthouse in the Harbor District. Also married to a woman named Ashley who thinks he's in Seattle on business 3 days a week. Married? I looked up from the photos. Oh, it gets better. Ashley Mercer is a divorce attorney, specializes in high-asset cases, and has a reputation for destroying cheating husbands in court. Owen grinned. Your wife picked a real winner. The photos told a story that would make a soap opera writer jealous. Veronica and Julian at expensive restaurants, walking hand in hand through the park, entering his building together. The timestamps showed a pattern: Tuesday and Thursday evenings, plus Saturday afternoons when I thought she was at yoga. How long has this been going on? I asked. Based on what I could track, at least 4 months, probably longer. Owen pulled out his phone and showed me a video. But here's the real kicker. The video showed Julian's Tesla parked outside our house. My house. Veronica emerged from the passenger side, straightened her clothes, and walked to the front door like she was coming home from work. The timestamp showed last Tuesday at 11:30 p.m. He's been dropping her off at home, I said, my voice flat. Like she's a teenager sneaking back from prom. Owen shook his head. The disrespect is almost impressive. My Instagram account had become a masterpiece of strategic social media warfare. Daily posts of my new lifestyle, expensive dinners at restaurants Veronica had always wanted to try, weekend trips to wine country, photos with attractive women I'd met at networking events. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that screamed rebound relationship, just a man rediscovering his worth. The comments section had become a battlefield. Veronica's friends were sliding into my DMs with questions, concerns, and in some cases, offers to console me through my apparent marital difficulties. I responded to each one with carefully crafted messages that revealed nothing while implying everything. Maya Chen had become my unwitting accomplice. Her concern for our marriage led to regular coffee dates where she pumped me for information while accidentally revealing Veronica's growing panic about my transformation. She's been asking everyone about your Instagram, Maya confided over lattes at our usual cafe. She can't figure out where you're getting the money for all these fancy dinners. Maybe she should ask her husband, I suggested with a smile. Ben, what's really going on? Veronica won't talk about it, but she's been acting strange for months. And now you're posting pictures from the Ritz-Carlton and taking helicopter tours of the coast. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the moment. I'm just embracing life, Maya. Sometimes you realize you've been living in a cage you didn't even know existed. That evening, Veronica finally made her move. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, using the spare key I'd forgotten to retrieve. I found her standing in my living room, scrolling through her phone with the focused intensity of a detective examining evidence. We need to talk, she said without looking up. About what? I poured myself a scotch from the bar cart I'd bought specifically for this moment. About this. She held up her phone, showing my Instagram feed. About whatever midlife crisis you're having. About why you moved out without discussing it with your wife. I told you I needed space to think. You seemed relieved to have the house to yourself. I took a sip of the scotch, watching her face. More room for your design consultations. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition that I knew more than I was letting on. Your followers are asking questions, Ben. People we know. They're wondering if we're separated, if we're getting divorced. It's embarrassing. Is it? I sat down across from her, close enough to see the fine lines of stress around her eyes. I hadn't realized my social media presence was so important to you, especially since you've been too busy to notice what I've been doing for the past 6 months. That's not fair. My work has been demanding, but that doesn't mean I don't care about our marriage. Our marriage? I repeated the words like they were foreign. Tell me, Veronica, what does our marriage mean to you? She set down her phone and looked at me directly for the first time since arriving. It means everything. We've built a life together, Ben. A good life. I don't understand why you're trying to tear it down. I'm not tearing anything down. I'm just finally living authentically. I finished my scotch and stood up. Speaking of authentic, how's Julian? The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again without making a sound. I don't know what you're talking about, she finally managed. Julian Mercer, tech entrepreneur, drives a Tesla, takes you to the Marina Club on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I walked to the window, looking out at the harbor lights. Married to a divorce attorney named Ashley, who thinks he's in Seattle on business. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. When I turned around, Veronica was staring at me with the expression of someone who'd just realized they'd been playing poker with marked cards. How long have you known? She whispered. Long enough. I moved to the door and opened it. I think you should leave now. We'll talk when you're ready to have an honest conversation. She gathered her purse and phone with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back to me. Ben, please. We can work this out. We can fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Veronica. Some things can only be replaced. After she left, I called Owen. Phase 2? He asked. Phase 2, I confirmed. Let's introduce Julian to his wife. The Harbor Festival was the social event of the season, a weekend-long celebration that drew the city's elite to the waterfront for overpriced wine and networking disguised as charity fundraising. I'd bought a VIP table for 8, inviting carefully selected guests who would serve as both audience and participants in the evening's entertainment. Chloe Martinez from Veronica's design firm sat to my right, her phone positioned strategically to capture the perfect angle of our conversation. She'd been eager to accept my invitation, especially after I'd mentioned that several prominent business owners would be attending. Veronica doesn't know you're here, does she? Chloe asked, her eyes scanning the crowd for familiar faces. My wife and I are taking some time to reassess our priorities, I replied, the diplomatic non-answer I'd perfected over the past month. I thought it was important to maintain my social connections regardless of our personal situation. Sasha Williams, a real estate agent who'd sold houses to half our social circle, leaned across the table. Ben, I have to ask, are you two getting divorced? The rumors are getting pretty intense. Before I could answer, Owen appeared at my elbow. Ben, you need to see this. He handed me his phone, showing a live Instagram story from someone called Harbor Gossip. The video showed Veronica and Julian walking hand in hand through Riverside Park, the same park where she'd told me she was meeting a potential client to discuss outdoor lighting. When was this taken? I asked. 20 minutes ago, Owen said loud enough for my table companions to hear. Thought you should know your wife was in the park with some guy while you're here supporting local charities. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Chloe's eyes went wide, and I could see her fingers moving across her phone screen, undoubtedly sharing this development with her extensive network. Sasha actually gasped, then covered her mouth like she was trying to stuff the sound back in. "Oh my God, Ben," Sasha whispered. "I'm so sorry. That must be humiliating." "Actually," I said, taking a sip of my wine, "it's liberating. Sometimes you need confirmation that you're making the right decisions." Within an hour, the Harbor Gossip account had posted a series of photos showing Veronica and Julian at various locations around the city. Someone had been documenting their affair for weeks, and now it was being broadcast to anyone with an Instagram account and an appetite for scandal. My phone buzzed with messages from friends, family, and acquaintances expressing sympathy, outrage, and barely concealed excitement about the drama unfolding in real time. I responded to each one with grace and dignity, playing the role of the wronged husband who was taking the high road despite his wife's public betrayal. The real masterpiece came when Maya Chen arrived at the festival. She'd been tagged in dozens of posts about Veronica's affair and had driven straight from her house still wearing yoga clothes and a shocked expression. "Ben!" She rushed to my table, her phone clutched in her hand like evidence in a murder trial. "Have you seen what people are saying about Veronica?" "I've seen enough," I said calmly. "Would you like to sit down? I can have them bring another chair." "This is insane. Everyone's talking about it. The photos are everywhere." Maya showed me her phone, scrolling through post after post of Veronica and Julian. "How long has this been going on? Did you know?" "I suspected something was wrong," I admitted, allowing a note of pain to creep into my voice. "But I hoped I was being paranoid. I guess I wasn't paranoid enough." Chloe leaned forward, her phone now openly recording our conversation. "Ben, you're handling this so well. I don't know how you're staying so calm. What's the alternative? Make a scene? Embarrass myself further?" I shrugged. I'd rather focus on moving forward than dwelling on what I can't change. The evening's climax came when Veronica herself appeared at the festival. She'd clearly been trying to reach me. My phone showed 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. She spotted our table from across the pavilion and began making her way through the crowd, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This should be interesting," Owen murmured. Veronica reached our table just as Chloe was live streaming to her Instagram followers, providing real-time commentary on the drama unfolding at the Harbor Festival. The timing couldn't have been more perfect if I'd choreographed it myself. "Ben, we need to talk, now." Veronica's voice carried across the pavilion, drawing attention from nearby tables. "Hello, Veronica." I stood up, ever the gentleman. "I wasn't expecting to see you here. How was your meeting in the park?" Her face went pale. "You saw the posts." "Everyone saw the posts. They're quite popular." I gestured to the empty chair beside Maya. "Would you like to sit down? I'm sure our friends would love to hear your side of the story." "Our friends?" She looked around the table, taking in the faces of people she'd known for years, all of them staring at her with expressions ranging from pity to disgust. "You planned this." "I planned to attend a charity event. You planned to have an affair with a married man. I'd say your planning was more comprehensive than mine." The words hit her like physical blows. She stumbled backward, bumping into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne glasses. The crash drew even more attention, and suddenly half the festival was watching our impromptu drama unfold. "You bastard," she hissed. "You're enjoying this." "I'm enjoying supporting local charities," I replied. "You're the one who chose to make your personal life a public spectacle." Veronica looked around at the crowd of phones pointed in her direction, at the faces of people she'd considered friends, now watching her humiliation with fascination. She opened her mouth to say something else, then seemed to realize that anything she said would only make things worse. Instead, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement in rapid staccato beats. The crowd watched her go, then slowly turned back to their conversations. though I could see phones still recording and fingers still typing. "Jesus, Ben," Maya said softly. "That was brutal." "That was honest," I corrected. "Sometimes the truth is brutal." My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. "Julian's Tesla is getting towed from the park. Expired registration." What a shame. I smiled and ordered another bottle of wine for the table. The night was young, and the real show was just getting started. Julian Mercer's penthouse was everything I'd expected from a tech entrepreneur with more money than sense. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and enough smart home technology to launch a space shuttle. What he didn't have was adequate security, a fact Owen had confirmed during his reconnaissance mission. "Motion sensors on the main entrance, but the parking garage is practically unguarded," Owen reported as we sat in his surveillance van across from Julian's building. "Service elevator goes straight to the penthouse level. Building management is outsourced to a company that pays minimum wage and doesn't ask questions." It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, which meant Julian was either at home alone or entertaining my wife, while his own wife thought he was in Seattle. Either way, his precious Tesla was sitting in the garage like a chrome-wrapped present waiting to be unwrapped. "Remind me why we're not just sending the affair photos to his wife?" I asked, pulling on latex gloves. "Because that's boring," Owen replied. "Besides, you said you wanted him to feel as exposed and humiliated as you did. Hard to accomplish that with an email attachment." The parking garage smelled like concrete and expensive car wax. Julian's Tesla sat in a reserved spot near the elevator, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a technological altar. Owen had come prepared with a toolkit that would have impressed a professional car thief. "This is going to void his warranty," Owen said cheerfully as he popped the hood. "Among other things, we worked quickly and efficiently. The fish guts came from Owen's friend who owned a seafood restaurant and was happy to contribute to what he called romantic justice. The glitter was my contribution, industrial grade, the kind used in art projects that never fully comes off anything it touches. But the real masterpiece was the note I left on his windshield. Your wife, Ashley, called. She knows about Veronica. She knows about the other women. She knows about the penthouse. She's waiting for you at home with divorce papers and a very expensive attorney. Have a great day. A concerned citizen. By the time we finished, Julian's Tesla looked like a crime scene from a very sparkly murder. The smell alone would take weeks to eliminate, assuming he could find someone willing to clean it. Phase 1 complete, Owen said as we walked back to his van. Ready for Phase 2? Phase 2 involved a carefully orchestrated social media campaign designed to destroy what remained of Veronica's reputation. I'd spent weeks building relationships with key influencers in our social circle, providing them with just enough information to fuel speculation while maintaining plausible deniability about my role in the revelations. The Harbor Gossip Instagram account had become the unofficial chronicler of Veronica's affair, posting daily updates that read like a soap opera plot summary. New photos appeared regularly. Veronica and Julian at restaurants, entering hotels, shopping for jewelry that I'd never seen her wear at home. But the real damage came from Veronica's own friends turning against her. Chloe Martinez had been quietly documenting Veronica's lies and inconsistencies, building a case that she presented to their mutual colleagues like a prosecutor addressing a jury. She told me she was visiting her sick mother in Portland, Chloe explained to a group of women from their design firm, her phone recording the conversation for later posting. But Maya saw her at the Marina Club with some guy. Same night, same time. The women nodded knowingly, their faces showing the particular satisfaction that comes from having their suspicions confirmed. Veronica had always been the queen bee of their social circle, and queen bees make enemies along with admirers. Maya Chen had become my most valuable asset without realizing it. Her genuine concern for our marriage led her to investigate Veronica's behavior with the thoroughness of a private detective. She'd started documenting inconsistencies in Veronica's stories, tracking her social media activity, and asking pointed questions that Veronica couldn't answer without revealing her deception. "Something's not right," Maya confided during one of our coffee meetings. "Veronica's been lying about everything. Her work schedule, her client meetings, even basic stuff like where she had lunch. It's like she's living a completely different life." "Maybe she is," I suggested. "Maybe the Veronica we thought we knew was the lie." The turning point came when Julian's wife discovered his affair in the most public way possible. Ashley Mercer was attending a legal conference when someone forwarded her the Harbor gossip posts showing her husband with Veronica. Her response was swift, professional, and devastating. Within 24 hours, Julian found himself served with divorce papers, locked out of his penthouse, and facing a forensic audit of his business finances. Ashley Mercer didn't just practice divorce law, she was an artist of marital destruction, and Julian had provided her with a masterpiece of infidelity to work with. Julian's first instinct was to blame me, which was both predictable and stupid. He showed up at my apartment building at midnight, drunk and belligerent, demanding to know what I'd done to his car and his marriage. "You think you're so smart," he slurred, swaying in the lobby while the security guard watched nervously. "You think you can destroy my life because your wife chose a better man?" "I think you destroyed your own life," I replied calmly. "I just helped document the process." "This isn't over," Julian threatened, pointing at me with the unsteady finger of a man who discovered that actions have consequences. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "Actually, I know exactly who I'm messing with. A married man who's been lying to his wife while sleeping with mine. The question is, do you know who you're messing with?" Owen appeared beside me, as if materializing from thin air, his presence shifting the dynamic in the lobby immediately. Julian took one look at Owen's scarred knuckles and prison tattoos, then decided that discretion was the better part of valor. "This conversation isn't over," Julian muttered, backing toward the exit. "Yes, it is," I said firmly. "Because if you come near me or my property again, I'll make sure your wife gets copies of every text message, every photo, and every credit card receipt from your affair. I'll also make sure your business partners learn about your creative expense reporting and your habit of using company resources for personal entertainment." Julian's face went white. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone and showed him a folder labeled Julian Mercer, Complete Financial and Personal Records. The folder contained over 200 files. "Try me," I said. He left without another word, and I never saw him again. According to Owen's sources, Julian moved to San Francisco 2 weeks later, presumably to start over somewhere his reputation hadn't preceded him, but Veronica was still in the game, and she was about to make her most desperate move yet. The Skyline Club occupied the top floor of the Harbor District's tallest building, offering panoramic views of the city and a membership list that read like a who's who of local society. I'd booked their private event space for what I'd advertised as a moving forward party, a celebration of new beginnings and authentic living. The guest list was carefully curated: Maya Chen, Chloe Martinez, Sasha Williams, and a dozen other key figures from our social circle. People who'd watched my marriage implode in real time and were now curious to see how the story would end. Veronica wasn't invited, but I knew she'd come anyway. Desperation makes people predictable, and Veronica had been growing more desperate by the day. Her design firm had placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation into her relationship with clients. The investigation had been triggered by anonymous tips about her unprofessional conduct, tips that coincidentally arrived the same day that detailed records of her affair became public knowledge. Her parents, Richard and Patricia Olson, had been particularly brutal in their response to their daughter's scandal. As pillars of the country club set, they viewed Veronica's public humiliation as a personal attack on their social standing. Their solution was to publicly distance themselves from their daughter, making statements to anyone who would listen about their disappointment in her choices. "We raised Veronica to have better judgment and stronger moral character," Patricia had told the Society page reporter who'd called for a comment. Her recent behavior doesn't reflect the values we instilled in her. The party was in full swing when Veronica made her entrance. She'd clearly spent hours preparing for this moment, wearing a black dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary and carrying herself with the desperate confidence of someone trying to project strength they didn't feel. The conversation in the room faded as she walked toward my table. Phones appeared in hands like flowers blooming in spring, everyone eager to document whatever was about to happen. "Ben," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "We need to talk." "Hello, Veronica." I stood up, maintaining the polite facade that had served me so well throughout this entire process. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I'm sure you weren't." She looked around at the faces staring at her, recognizing people who had once been her friends and allies. "Though it seems like everyone else got an invitation." "This is a private event for people I trust," I replied. "People who've been honest with me." The words hit their mark. Veronica's composure cracked slightly, revealing the desperation underneath her carefully constructed exterior. "You want to talk about honesty?" Her voice rose, drawing attention from other parts of the club. "Let's talk about what you've been doing for the past 2 months. The stalking, the harassment, the systematic destruction of my life." "I haven't destroyed anything," I said calmly. "I've simply stopped participating in the fiction that our marriage was healthy and honest." "You had my car repossessed." "Your car was repossessed because you stopped making payments after your firm placed you on leave. I'm not responsible for the consequences of your professional misconduct." "You turned my friends against me." "Your friends turned against you when they learned you'd been lying to them for months. I didn't force you to create a secret Instagram account or have an affair with a married man." Each response was calculated to highlight her lack of accountability while maintaining my position as the reasonable party in this dispute. The audience was eating it up, their phones capturing every word for later dissemination across social media. Veronica's final gambit was as predictable as it was desperate. She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers, waving them at me like evidence in a courtroom drama. "I have proof that you've been stalking me," she announced. "Photos, witness statements, documentation of your harassment campaign. I'm filing a restraining order, and I'm pressing charges." The room fell silent. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, the inevitable escalation that would give me the opportunity to deliver the final blow. "That's interesting," I said, pulling out my own phone, "because I have something too." I connected my phone to the room's presentation system, and suddenly, the wall-mounted screen came alive with a video. The footage showed Veronica and Julian in our driveway, discussing their plan to frame me for harassment. The audio was crystal clear, thanks to the security system I'd installed months earlier. "We need to make it look like he's been stalking me," Veronica's voice filled the room. "Threatening me, following me, maybe even physically intimidating me. If we can get him arrested, I can claim emotional distress and get a better settlement in the divorce." "Are you sure about this?" Julian's voice responded. "Making false accusations is serious business. He's already destroyed my reputation and my career. What else can he do to me?" The video continued for another 3 minutes, showing Veronica and Julian discussing fabricated evidence, coached witness statements, and their plan to manipulate the legal system. It was a masterclass in premeditated perjury, recorded in high definition and broadcast to a room full of influential people. The silence that followed was deafening. Veronica stared at the screen in horror, her face cycling through expressions of shock, fear, and rage. The papers in her hand, her supposed evidence of my harassment, fluttered to the floor like autumn leaves. "You recorded us," she whispered. "I recorded my own property," I corrected. "You chose to commit multiple felonies in front of my security cameras." Maya Chen was the first to break the silence. "Veronica, what have you done?" "This is entrapment," Veronica said desperately. "It's illegal. You can't use this." "Actually, I can," I replied. Home security recordings are admissible evidence in court, especially when they document criminal conspiracy and perjury. I've already provided copies to the district attorney's office. The crowd began to murmur, the sound building like a gathering storm. Phones were buzzing with messages as people shared the video across their networks. Within minutes, Veronica's plan to frame me would be public knowledge, adding attempted fraud to her growing list of public humiliations. "You've destroyed me," she said, tears beginning to stream down her face. "You've taken everything from me." "I've taken nothing from you," I replied. "You destroyed yourself with your choices. I just refused to be destroyed along with you." Veronica looked around the room one last time, seeing the faces of people who had once respected her, now looking at her with disgust and pity. Her parents, who had arrived late to the party, stood near the elevator with expressions of mortification and rage. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm free," I replied. "For the first time in years, I'm completely free." She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor in a rhythm that sounded like a funeral march. The crowd parted to let her pass, their silence more devastating than any words could have been. As the elevator doors closed behind her, I raised my glass to the room. "To new beginnings," I said. "To new beginnings," the room echoed back. 6 months later, I sat in my lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Veronica had agreed to everything. I kept the house, the investments, and most of our shared assets. She walked away with her personal belongings and enough money to start over somewhere else, assuming she could find someone willing to hire her after her professional reputation imploded. "She's lucky you didn't press charges for the conspiracy," my attorney said, sliding the papers across his desk. "The DA was ready to prosecute based on that security footage." "I got what I wanted," I replied, signing my name with a flourish. "Justice doesn't always require prison." The legal proceedings had been swift and decisive. Veronica's attempt to frame me had backfired spectacularly, destroying any credibility she might have had in court. Her own attorney had advised her to accept whatever terms I offered rather than risk a trial that would only further expose her misconduct. Julian Mercer had disappeared entirely, last seen boarding a plane to somewhere without extradition treaties. His wife Ashley had taken him for everything he owned, then published a tell-all article in a legal journal about recognizing and prosecuting marital fraud. The article had become required reading in family law courses across the country. Maya Chen had been the most shocked by the revelations about Veronica's true character. She'd spent weeks apologizing to me for not seeing through her friend's deceptions, as if loyalty was something to be ashamed of. "I feel so stupid," she'd said during one of our final coffee meetings. All those times she lied to my face, and I believed her. "She was good at lying," I'd replied. "She had years of practice." Chloe Martinez had parlayed her inside knowledge of the scandal into a promotion at the design firm, taking over several of Veronica's former clients and building a reputation as someone who could be trusted with sensitive projects. She'd also become something of a social media celebrity, her documentation of the affair's aftermath earning her thousands of followers who appreciated her insider perspective on the drama. The Harbor Gossip Instagram account had revealed its true identity in a final post. It was run by Ms. Eleanor Doran, the elderly woman who lived across the street from our old house. She'd been documenting neighborhood scandals for years, but Veronica's affair had been her masterpiece of social media investigation. 40 years of watching people's secrets, she'd told the local newspaper reporter who'd interviewed her. Social media just made it easier to share what I learned. My own Instagram account had evolved into something more authentic than the revenge weapon it had started as. I posted about my new hobbies, my travels, and my gradual rediscovery of who I was when I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. The followers, who had initially been drawn by scandal, had stayed for the genuine content about rebuilding a life after betrayal. The final confrontation came on a rainy Thursday evening in November. I was leaving my office when I found Veronica waiting by my car, soaked from the rain and looking like a ghost of her former self. 6 months of consequences had aged her years, stripping away the polished veneer that had once defined her public image. "Ben," she said as I approached, "please, I need to talk to you." "We don't have anything to talk about," I replied, clicking my key fob to unlock the car. "I know what you think of me," she said desperately. "I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm trying to rebuild my life, and everywhere I go, people know what happened. They know about Julian, about the affair, about everything. That's not my problem. You could help me," she pressed. "You could tell people that you forgive me, that we've both moved on. Your word carries weight now. People respect you." I turned to face her fully, taking in the desperation in her eyes and the tremor in her voice. This was the woman who had lied to me for months, who had tried to frame me for harassment, who had shown no remorse until her actions had consequences. "You want me to help rehabilitate your reputation," I said. "I want you to show mercy." "Mercy." I repeated the word like I was tasting something bitter. "You want mercy from the man you tried to send to prison for crimes you made up." I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking very clearly. You planned every step of your deception, from the fake Instagram account to the fabricated harassment claims. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. Rain continued to fall around us, turning the parking lot into a mirror that reflected the streetlights like fallen stars. Veronica wrapped her arms around herself, shivering in the cold. "I lost everything," she whispered. "My job, my friends, my family. Even my parents won't speak to me." "You didn't lose those things," I corrected. "You threw them away. You chose Julian over your marriage. You chose deception over honesty. You chose revenge over accountability. Every consequence you're facing is the result of choices you made." "So this is it?" she asked. "This is how our story ends? With you walking away and leaving me with nothing?" I opened my car door and paused, looking back at her one final time. "This isn't how our story ends, Veronica. This is how your story begins. For the first time in your adult life, you're going to have to live with the consequences of your actions without someone else to blame or manipulate. Maybe you'll learn something from the experience." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the rain. In my rearview mirror, I watched her figure grow smaller until she disappeared entirely. 3 months later, I heard through Maya that Veronica had moved to Portland and was working as a sales associate at a furniture store. She'd started using her maiden name and had deleted all her social media accounts. According to Maya, she seemed to be trying to build a quiet, anonymous life away from the wreckage of her past. I felt no satisfaction in this news, no sense of victory or vindication. Veronica's downfall had been complete and devastating, but it had also been entirely self-inflicted. I had simply refused to be complicit in my own destruction. On a warm Saturday morning in spring, I stood on the deck of my house now legally and emotionally, drinking coffee and watching the harbor. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Owen. "Drinks tonight? I found a new place that makes excellent martinis." I smiled and typed back, "Sounds perfect, I'm buying." As I hit send, I realized that I was genuinely looking forward to the evening, to the company of a true friend, to the simple pleasure of good conversation and better alcohol. These were small things, ordinary things, but they felt revolutionary after years of walking on eggshells around someone else's deceptions. I'd been caged for so long that I'd forgotten what freedom felt like. Now I knew. It felt like Saturday morning coffee on my own deck, like making plans without checking someone else's schedule, like sleeping soundly at night without wondering what lies I'd discover in the morning. Veronica had branded herself as the Uncaged in her secret social media life, but she had never understood what being truly uncaged meant. It wasn't about escaping responsibility or consequences. It was about living authentically, making choices based on your own values rather than someone else's expectations. I finished my coffee, set the mug on the railing, and went inside to start my day. There were no more games to play, no more strategies to implement, no more revenge to plan or execute. There was just life, real, honest, uncomplicated life, stretching out ahead of me like an open road. For the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see where it would lead.